guys, welcome back to Sharp Books. So today I'm going to be doing my March wrap up, and March was a really good reading month for me. The past few months have been good reading months, but I read 11 books this month, which for me is a pretty decent amount. It is definitely more than I have been reading. It's funny because I used to film like a lot of mid-month wrap-ups where I could kind of split it, just because a lot of times it is easier to talk about fewer books. You can kind of go into more detail and gush, but I didn't do it this time because I hadn't been reading that many. But going forward, if my reading mojo stays the same, I may have to start splitting these up because this might be kind of a long video. So get yourself settled, grab yourself a drink. I brought some iced coffee over. I'm gonna be sipping on down here because it might get a little long because I'm a little chatty. So I did decide this month to do my wrap up in order from least to most favorite. Usually I do it in order of what I read, like when I read them, but I've seen a lot of people do it this way, and I really liked it because it kind of saves the favorite book for the end. This month I had 2 3-star reads. Let's see, 5 4-star reads and 4 5-star reads. So a pretty good month, pretty solid. There were a couple 3 stars, which I've been trying to be a little more, like, I don't want to say honest because I'm always honest, but I want to kind of wait a minute before I give up my books a rating, because sometimes when you finish a book, you're kind of on that high, and I do feel like I kind of maybe escalate the rating a little bit because of that, whether it's intentional or not. The first book I want to talk about is For Never by Aurora Rose Reynolds, and this is a contemporary romance, and I really love a lot of Aurora Rose Reynolds. That's a mouthful to say, but I've loved her books in the past. Some of my favorite books when I first started getting into kind of contemporary romance were some of my faves. But I feel like I haven't loved the last couple of them, and this one kind of fell into that. So I gave it 3 stars. So I actually wrote down in my notes, which is why I'm glancing down here, but I actually wrote down character names, guys. So I don't have to keep calling them female and male, like, main characters. So this book follows Jace and Penny, and this book basically is about Penny is a teacher, and she's off for the summer because she has the summer off. And she really wants to make some extra money though, because her mom has recently beat cancer, and she wants to take her on this trip to France to kind of celebrate. So she gets this like summer gig working for Jace, who through her friend who had to go on maternity leave. So she's taking her place just for the summer, right? And Jace is the boss. So it's kind of a boss employee relationship, but it also has forced proximity, and it has a fake engagement. So what happens is Jace is the CEO of this company, but I did like this part. He started off as like a YouTube gamer and made a ton of money that way, which I thought was just kind of fun because I mean, that's how a lot of people are making money, is through like social media or something like that. So after that, he developed his own company, and now they create games himself. So he's going home to this reunion type situation with his whole family who he hasn't seen in a long time. There was some drama with like his past girlfriend. He desperately needs someone to come with him to be his fake fiance. And Penny basically gets roped into this. Like, she doesn't even know what's happening at first. And I think that's part of why I was like, what? I am all for a fake engagement or fake whatever, fake dating. I love it. But this one, he kind of ropes her in without her knowing it, because the person he originally wanted fell through, and he needs to get someone last minute. So Penny gets on this plane thinking they're just going on a business trip that she's accompanying him on, and really they're engaged. And I felt like this just didn't work for me. It was cute, don't get me wrong, and the reason I actually picked this up is the author did a really good job of selling this on like social media. I kept seeing like reels and things like that with like quotes from the book, and the quotes were great. I'm like, this is totally being sold for me. But I just feel like in execution, the characters felt a little bit flat. I didn't completely buy their relationship. I just don't think there was enough time. It was a pretty short book, and I don't think I understood it. It seemed kind of to go from like, I don't like you, to like insta love a little too fast. And this author is known for her insta love, and sometimes it totally works for me. This just wasn't one of those cases. And I just felt like it just, in like 2 months from now, I may not remember anything about this book. So 3 stars. I've got to go faster because I'm gonna be here forever. So the next book is The Midnight Bride by Katie Wilde. So this is book 2 in the Deadlands series, and I picked this up because I loved the first book in this series, which was The Midwinter Mail Order Bride. Now these books are kind of crazy. Like, they're about kind of like a barbarian, and they're set in like a very fantasy style world. And I really loved that one though. I liked the way it was done. It was a novella length. This one was pretty much a novella length as well. I think it was like 150 pages maybe or less. But this one just didn't quite, it was not as good as the first one, and that made me super sad. There's another novella I still need to read, or 2 maybe, and then there is going to be a full-length novel in this world, which is why I wanted to pick these up, because I loved the first novella so much that I was super excited to have a new like fantasy book. I actually think they might be, I might have already read this on the Read Me Romance podcast, but I don't follow that podcast. So anyways, all that to say, this book follows Mara and Strax, and Mara is basically in this competition to basically, it's kind of like they're competing to get to this big, powerful thing. And Strax is like part of this order that is set to protect this thing and let nobody get it because it's too much power. And he has been following along basically as a competitor, but like trying not to win. And he's kind of fallen in love with Mara, but he can't tell her because she's trying to get this thing and he's trying to keep her from getting this thing. And it's their relationship. And I just felt, again, it fell really flat for me. I just didn't feel the connection. The first one was pretty short too, and it managed to like make me believe that these people loved each other in that short amount of time, and this one just didn't. I don't know, I felt like it's jumped to the steamy scenes too quickly, and I don't know, it just didn't work for me. So I will probably read the next novella because I want to read the full-length book and I kind of want to be caught up. So it was cute. It's a cute time. If you like fantasy though, do check out this series by Katie Wilde because I do think it's a fun series and I don't hear as many people talk about it. Very steamy though, just keep that in mind. The next book is the first in a series that I kind of binged. This one is called Stolen by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd. This is a mafia series, and I read the first book in the series, which I'll get to because I liked it a little bit better, so in a minute, but we read it for my in-person book club, and here's the thing with this series. Was it the best series ever? No, but was it so addicting and you just had to keep reading all the books and wanted to binge? Yes, absolutely. Like this book though was probably my least favorite that I read, which is interesting because I know some people, this is their favorite in the series. I did give this one 4 stars. By the way, if I didn't say that, the first 2 books were 3 stars. Now we're going into the 4 stars. So this whole series follows different mafia bosses. This particular one is the Turkish mafia, which is interesting. I've never heard. And here's my philosophy on kind of like all mafia romances. To me, they really read kind of like a fantasy, right? So you got to take yourself out of the real world, put yourself into this mafia setting and kind of just get rid of all other thoughts. And when you do that, it can kind of take you away and they're super enjoyable. Like I flew through these. So this is book 3 actually in that series. And it's about, so this is book 3 in that series actually. It's about Gabriel and Lara. And basically, you know, Gabriel's out for revenge. He was hurt by this horrible man years and years ago before he was ever involved with the mafia. This man killed his family. And so he's been trying to get revenge on this man who's just honestly a despicable human, such a horrible man. And Laura is working for this man, not by her choice. Like basically her mom was taken from her country, brought here to be a servant in this horrible man's house. And Laura has grown up this way with honestly really, really bad, horrible circumstances, a lot of trauma. Please, for this whole series, with really any mafia book, look up trigger warnings. I do think they were listed somewhere because I saw them. So either it was either at the beginning of the book or it was on Goodreads. So definitely look them up because especially this book, Laura's background is really like hard to read about. But anyway, so Gabriel at the beginning of the book storms this house. They're finally ready to like take down this guy. And when they storm the house, Laura kind of gets hurt in the crossfire. She gets shot on accident, but he takes her kind of as thinking she'd be leverage, or somehow he can get like information about this bad guy. And the story kind of goes from there. It's their romance, obviously. But I don't know. I thought I might like this one the best because it's kind of a Cinderella type take. Obviously, she grew up as a servant with very little to her name. Gabriel's very wealthy. He has this house. And I did like aspects of it. So obviously, he kind of starts breaking down his walls. Although I'm very sorry. My cat is losing her mind and keeps yowling at me. So she's fine. I'm very sorry if you keep hearing that though. But Gabriel, she comes in, basically his housekeeper kind of takes her under her wing, and the deal is basically made that like she can stay in his house and be like help. And I don't know, like I gave it 4 stars, but I felt like maybe it was because she was working for him at the beginning. And also Lara was very, very, very sheltered in the sense that she's never known the outside world. I think she's like 22-ish in this book. But I mean, she's grown up in these horrible conditions. She's never been able to go to school. She's never been able to have a real boyfriend. She's never been able to do any of the things. So I felt like because she was so young and naive, I didn't love her relationship with Gabriel and how quick it moved. I didn't fully believe their romance and believe that like that instant kind of attraction could build into something real. I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite in the series. So the next book was actually the first book in this Mafia series, which was called Taken by a Sinner, again by Michelle Hurd. I also gave this one 4 stars, but I'd say this one's like a good solid 4. The previous one's probably closer to like a 3.5, rounded up. But this one is about Nicholas and Tess, and this kind of introduces you to the whole world. One thing I did like is these guys, all the mafia bosses, kind of have like this bromance going where they have made an agreement not to bother each other, and they basically protect each other and kind of like, help each other when crap hits the fan, if you will. So Nicholas's and Tessa's story comes first, and you're kind of introduced to everybody. Nicholas is over the Greek, I don't know if it's mafia or crime syndicate, but he's a controlling guy over a lot of bad people. That's all I got. And again, this one was the first one I read, and I couldn't stop reading it. It was super addicting, like really, truly, like I finished this in a day, which is pretty rare for me. I picked up the next book the next day, and so I think this one had some really strong things about it. I really liked, so Tess in this book is finishing college. She's like 21 or 22, and obviously Nicholas is head of the Greek crime syndicate, and they have basically an arranged marriage, which we all know. I do love that trope. So in this book, he has to get married, and their marriage is kind of arranged. Tess is not happy about this. Basically, at this one, I kind of don't want to say exactly what happens because I do feel like it had a couple twists that like I thought were pretty good. So just know they do end up together, but like how they get there in this arranged marriage is kind of up to you to read if you so desire. But just know, super addicting. Nicholas definitely starts off as very rough. Like there was a part where I'm like, are they gonna turn this guy around? Because I do love a redemption, but like he was just very assholey. That's the best way I can say it, like really was. And it took a while. I did like that Tess really stood up to him, even though she was quite a bit younger and definitely didn't have any like quote unquote power in this relationship. I felt like it did work better for me than the one I previously talked about because she really did kind of stick up for herself, what she wanted. She likes photography, and she's like, no, I'm not going to just give up all of my dreams for you. And it kind of made, Nicholas have this like moment of clarity of like, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that. Like I am being a jerk here. And once it kind of started rolling, I was on board. And again, super addicting. If you're looking for a new mafia like romance series, I do really like this series. I thought it was really fun. One thing I didn't love about this though, and I've seen other people in my book club, we also talked about it, was the way they represented and dealt with anxiety in this book was not my favorite. Tess deals with a lot of anxiety, and they had her, talking about it, which I like. We want that representation. But what I didn't like was she was constantly popping anxiety pills. And I mean, I like that medication's great. I'm not saying people shouldn't be medicated for anxiety, but it was just the way it was written. It was like constantly having her take pills. I don't take medication for anxiety personally, so I don't know, but it just seemed like it was kind of odd to have her do it that often. I could be totally wrong on that. But the other thing was just how they dealt with it as she got more into the relationship. It definitely was one of those, oh, I fell in love, I got married, I have a strong protector, and so now I'm not anxious. And I just don't think that's how anxiety works. You know, you can definitely work through things and you can get strategies that help you with your anxiety, absolutely. But the whole idea of like, because I have a man or I have a romance, all of my problems go away just doesn't happen. And I don't think that was the best representation of that. And it just kind of irked me. So which is why honestly it didn't get 5 stars, because otherwise I really like this book. Okay, so the next book is kind of a fun one, and it's The Half Orcs Maiden Bride by Ruby Dixon. And I picked this one up kind of on a whim. I haven't read that much like monster type romance, but this one I really like Ruby Dixon. I've read not a ton, but I've read enough of her books to know I like her writing style. Also have seen some people I really trust talk about this book, so I felt like, let's give it a go. It was a pretty short read. I think it's like novella length. I don't think it was like a full-size book. And I gave this one 4 stars. It was really fun. This book basically just follows our 2 main characters, Agakor, and I think it's Iolanthi. I'm probably saying that wrong, but he is a half orc. She is basically a woman who has reached, she's a little, I don't remember how old exactly, but she's in her, either her late 20s or her early 30s. Thinks she's gonna just be a spinster. Like, she's quite tall and has always just been made out to be like the ugly one or the not pretty one, the not like delicate feminine one, because all of her sisters were much tinier and delicate. I really loved the way they represented her character because you know, she's always had this very big insecurity about her height and just how she's not a dainty little woman, but you know, she's been made to think that she can have no prospects. So her dad basically arranges this marriage for her that she is so excited for, because she's excited to just honestly get out of her dad's house, have some freedom, run her own household, get married. She doesn't know who it is, and they show up, and if it's Agakor, who is a half orc, and at first, like, her inner dialogue, Ruby Dixon does such a good job of really making you believe this romance. Like, honestly, it was so believable and so good. I really enjoyed it. And most of the book kind of just literally follows them as they get married. And then it has this whole wedding ritual that they have to go through, which was represented in one of her other books that I've read that has this like ritual that they have to go through like multiple days before they can get married. There wasn't a ton of drama. It really was just about them, and very steamy, like very steamy. But it was a fun time. So I really enjoyed. Okay, number 6 was Owned by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd, which is book 2 in the Mafia series. And I give this one 4 stars as well, but like I liked it a little bit more than the first one. That's why it's here, closer to the top. This one follows Liam and Kiara, and I just really liked Liam. I think that was kind of the end of the story why I like this one better. So Liam's over the Irish Mafia, and Kiara gets a job at a company that Liam owns, but she has no idea that it's involved in the mafia at all, because it's basically, he's trying to make this company go legit though, but he owns it. He also is the mafia boss. So it's kind of separate, but the same thing. But she's just so excited to get this job and to start earning some more money and maybe buy a bigger place and things like that. Kiara was just a very like relatable character. I liked her character. It kind of has a twist because her dad, she doesn't know, but her dad was actually in the Irish Mafia, or is in the Irish Mafia, and knows Liam, but like nobody knows the other person knows each other, if that makes sense, because he's hidden his daughter because he's never really wanted her involved in that world or to be in danger and things like that. And when he finds out who she's working for, he's like, heck no, you need to get out of there now, but won't tell her why. And so it was really cool because it was kind of like a workplace romance. It was obviously a mafia romance. Kiara is such a good character. I really liked her, the way she really came into her own. And I don't know, this was just my favorite of the 3, I think. And I really, really like this one. The next one I read was Love Shove in New York by N.M. Patel. And I was so excited to read this book because this is a book by N.M. Patel, who is someone I followed on Instagram for a really long time. And I'll put her Instagram down below, but it's Liber Lady, and she's got a great Instagram account, but I saw that she was publishing her first romance book, and so obviously I was super excited to pick it up. I also really love this cover. I think it's such a cute cover. So this book follows Akira and Sam, and Akira is from India, and she is coming over to the United States, to New York, to study, get her master's at Columbia. Was it Columbia? I'm pretty sure it was Columbia. It was one of the New York universities. And Sam is also getting his master's there, but he grew up in New York, and they're both in the field of architecture. There are so many good things about this book. So the author is Indian, did grow up in India, and came to New York just like the character for her master's. So it is an own voices book, and I felt like I really liked a lot of the aspects of bringing in her culture, and a big part of the book was exploring what an interracial, intercultural relationship looks like, you know, between obviously Sam's American, she's Indian, and kind of the big things that are different and how are they the same, and just honestly all of the ways that it can be super challenging, but also really beautiful in the end. And for the most part, Akira was such a cool character. She obviously is such a strong heroine coming to this country to study architecture. She really wants to be able to be on her own, make her own name. And in India with architecture, it just wasn't possible as like it is in the United States. And then Sam was such, like, for the most part, Sam was such a squishy marshmallow of a person. He's like super bookish, super introverted. When he gets there, he's like totally focused on school and does not want to be distracted. But then Akira kind of blows into his life and is this like just vibrant, very smart, very sweet, like colorful personality, and he just can't help but falling. They really show a lot of Indian traditions and culture and food, and I really enjoyed that. And I don't think I've read a romance that talks this heavily about kind of having that kind of intercultural, interracial romance in this way. There really wasn't a third act breakup, which I liked. However, you know, and instead of that third act breakup, there really was just outside forces. It's a big deal to marry someone like outside of your country and your religion and all of those differences, and how her family kind of reacted to that the couple had to really like bind together for that. I really liked the steamy scenes. I thought they were really well done. I don't know, it just totally worked for me. The only thing I didn't love completely was I did feel like they did go on a bit much with how hard it was with her family, almost to the point where you weren't liking her family. And again, I have not been in this position. I know this author has a lot more knowledge on that front, so I'm not judging that at all. I just think that it kind of dragged on a little bit long with the family being that against her relationship with Sam. And I just kind of wish that had been sped up a little bit. The other thing was, you get both perspectives, which I love a dual perspective book. You get Sam and Akira's point of views throughout the book, which I think was super helpful in general, because you're seeing what they're both thinking and how they're falling. I think a few of Sam's inner dialogues, particularly about like the Indian culture, I don't know, I didn't love the way that was written. You know, again, just my personal opinion, it wasn't enough for me to like not like the book. But I will say there was just a couple little things that didn't make it quite a 5-star for me. But I think it was such a good debut book, such a good romance, and I really would, you know, recommend it. The next book I read was The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas, probably saying that wrong, but I really liked this book. So this book I did give 5 stars. This is my first 5-star book of the month, and this one follows Aaron and Lena. And I'm not gonna lie, I was actually quite nervous to go into this book because it's such a, I feel like for the most part, beloved book. But there are some strong opinions regarding this book, as far as like, you know, some people either loved it or just really didn't enjoy parts of this. And I just didn't want to be disappointed. I feel like I had my hopes really high, but I really, really liked this. So it starts off kind of as a workplace romance. Aaron and Lena work together, and I think this is set in New York as well. I think this one and Love Shove in New York actually have a couple things that are pretty similar about them, in a good way. But they're working at this company. Lena is from Spain, and she is in New York working. And Aaron, I don't remember if he's from New York or not, but he's from the United States. And they basically are just bitter rivals. I thought they did that well. I thought it wasn't like overkill, but like they just don't like each other. They work in the same workplace. Basically, Lena overheard something when she first started working there. She was just so nice to him, trying to be kind, trying to make, you know, an acquaintance, a friend, and he just wanted nothing to do with it. Said something, she overheard it, and has just been like, no, sir, like I do not want anything to do with Erin since then. Well, obviously, perhaps things changed and Erin really does like her, but the book really takes off because Lena is desperate for a date to her sister's wedding that's going to be taking place in Spain, and the best man of the wedding is her ex, who she's had a lot of drama with, and she just does not want to go to this wedding alone. Her family has always kind of made such a big deal out of the fact that, oh, Lena's still single, or, you know, Lena had such a hard time after her ex and, you know, she wasn't able to move on, and she just doesn't want that. Now, I will say that whole aspect of it was not my favorite thing, and there were a couple things in this book that weren't perfect. It's not a perfect book, but I felt like I still gave it 5 stars because of my utter enjoyment from about 50% onward. The first part of this book was a little slow for me, I'm not gonna lie. There's a few things as far as like that whole concept with her feeling like she had to have a date, being kind of insecure. There was also something about, you know, she didn't eat because she wanted to lose weight and she had to be this certain size. Part of me just didn't love the way that was written, but at the same time, I know a lot of people probably are still in that mindset of, oh my gosh, I have to go to this wedding and look like perfection. So I didn't love those two things. It was a little slow, the whole like them getting there. So I think I skipped ahead. Basically, Erin offers to be her date to this wedding. And she's like, why? Why would you do that? We do not get along. We don't like each other, but she's desperate. So he ends up going with her. And from the moment they get like on the plane to Spain forward, I loved this book. It was so good. All of the antics with her big family. You know, there's like the bachelorette party, a bachelor party, which is like joint. There was like the reception. It was just hijinks and like hilarity. Obviously, they're having to pretend that they're totally in love. And it just really worked for me. Erin, I loved Erin. I really, really did. Like, he is a top book boyfriend. I felt like when you hear his backstory and you hear how he really did love her and all of that, you just fall in love with him. And just the way he was so supportive of Lena with her family and just was like, you know, with her ex and things, it was so swoony. So swoony. I just really loved it. And I liked the way that this worked out. There wasn't a really big third act breakup. There was a little something that happened, but I thought it was handled well. There wasn't a massive amount of miscommunication in my opinion. The thing that kind of does, I'd say, tear them apart a little bit towards the end, I felt like was sort of understandable, and it was moving kind of quickly, and I kind of understood, but they quickly did communicate, did fix things, and the ending was super friggin' cute. So I was not disappointed in this book, and I really do think that if you've been putting this off like me, pick it up. It's really cute. We're getting near the end. Oh my gosh. I feel like I've been talking forever. So the next one is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I finally read this book. I feel like March was the month of finally picking up some books that I had been putting off kind of, and I really loved this book. Now I will say, I did listen to this on audio, and I do think the audiobook is incredible. I love the narrators. I love just the way it was put together. It was so well done. That totally sucked me in. This is about Rowan and Zara. And Rowan is basically, this is the first book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. If you haven't read it, I feel like a lot of people have, but if you haven't, basically it's about 3 brothers who own basically the equivalent of Disney World. So they're very rich, but their grandfather, who was the creator of this Dreamland, passes away and leaves in his will that in order to get their inheritance and also be able to take over the company as a whole, each brother has to do something specific. And Rowan basically has to go to Dreamland and be the director of it for, I think it's like 6 months, and has to basically do this proposal of how he can improve it, and it has to be approved by like this selected board of people. Okay, so that's our setup. Zara works at Dreamland and is basically like second generation. Her parents work there as well. They're massive fans. I will say, if you are a Disney fan, like I grew up in Florida, I'm a very large Disney World fan. I love it. And if you are too, I do think this book has a lot of like Easter egg type things that are basically, we're talking about Disney World here, just with the parks and the rides and kind of the setup of everything. It's a lot of fun. And I think you'll like it if you are a Disney fan. Even if you're not, you will too. But I think it's a little something extra. So when you meet Zara, she's working in the basically the princess boutique where you turn the little girls into princesses. Or I think they do princes too. So princess or princesses. Zara is just such a good, fun character. I really liked her. She has had, she's had some bad relationships in the past, has been kind of traumatized by that. But these two meet because they meet in they meet in this meeting for like all the staff, and Zara just rubs Rowan the wrong way. They are just very different people, to be honest. Like Zara is quite a bit younger than him, I think like 6 or 7 years. He's a very uptight businessman. She's very kind of free-spirited and rides a skateboard and, wears cutoff jeans and stuff. And they're just on the outside very different people. And it goes from there. I really loved it. I loved Zara's sister in this. I thought her representation and having a disability representation was well done. I don't know. I really liked this book and I thought it was really good. This is another one that had a lot of hype and a lot of people who loved it, a lot of people who didn't. But it was, I don't know. I don't know. I was on the side of loving it. I do kind of wonder if it was just like a high, because I did love the audiobook so much. But I read this about a week ago and I still think this is one of my faves. And their romance together and like what each would kind of give up for the other to make this relationship work just worked for me. And overall just thought it was a super solid romance. The last 2 books I have to talk about are the last 2 books in the Carissa Broadbent's, it's the Lonely Hearts trilogy. So it's Children of Fallen Gods and Mother of Death and Dawn. And they were definitely my favorite 2 books of the month. I can't say too much because it is books 2 and 3. And so don't take my not gushing to mean I didn't love it. I feel like I can't because it will spoil so much. But I gave both of these 5 stars. I give the first book 4, but it just keeps getting better and better. This is a fantasy romance series. I feel like a lot of people are reading it right now, and it's definitely worth the hype. I loved it. This is another series I did listen to on audio, and I thought the audio was really good. It's on AnyPlay if anyone has that subscription. But it follows Max and Tasana. I will say book 2 I think is my favorite. There was just so much character growth. I loved the romance. I loved all of the plots that happened in the second book. The third book, because of something that happened at the end of the second book, was a little bit tough to read, just in that I was just sad. I was just sad. And I knew it was going to end up fine, but our characters are put through the ringer. Both of them. There is a lot going on. There's a lot of pain and trauma that they really do go through. And so, the third book, I loved it. The ending was perfection. If you want to know how to end a fantasy romance series, read the end and the epilogue of this series, because I was crying. I don't know. I might do a gush about this whole series at some point because I do feel like it's such a good series and I want to talk about all the spoilers, but I don't want to spoil it. So we'll leave it there, but just know, such a good fantasy romance series and I highly, highly recommend. All right, so those are all the books that I read in March. Sorry this kind of went a little bit long, but I did want to talk about all of them. Hopefully in April I can do a mid-month wrap up so it's not quite as long for you guys or for me. But I'd love to know if you guys read any of these, your thoughts, or what your favorite book of March was. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.